Hi friends! As you can see, we will be getting into Niji's Jumbo Bronzer. But before we do, if it's your first time here, hi, I'm Alicia, an online coach who loves to help people obtain sustainable nutrition and movement habits. I also love to talk about Fude, and if you want to see more brush videos, makeup videos, and all that fun stuff, consider subscribing. I know I'm talking about this early on in the video. YouTube likes this sort of thing. Forgive me. Maybe like my video, perhaps share it. And with all that out the way, let's get into the details. The Jumbo Bronzer will release tomorrow, Tuesday, September 13th, 10 a.m. Pacific or 1 p.m. Eastern. It will retail for $85 and made with dyed brown Psycho goat hair. I'll go through the comparisons and will of course see the demo, but I highly recommend with any Niji video that I do, you visit her blog, sweetmakeuptemptations.com. Sonia goes into full detail about the Jumbo Bronzer, the inspiration behind it, how it's designed, what to expect from this brush, and compares it to all her other brushes, not only in her collection, but in the general collection that she owns from different Fude brands. And not only that, but she'll also outline different products that you can use the Jumbo Bronzer with and what to expect from those different textures, which I think is amazing. And Sonia does her very best in providing you all the context required in you trying to decide if a brush is right for you or not. Not only, like I said, we'll get into the Jumbo Bronzer, but we'll make comparisons, like for instance with the Niji Pro and others. But I have to say, when I received this on Friday, I just wanted to spend the weekend with it, get acquainted with the brush, understand its design and how it feels, and everything Sonia had said to describe the Jumbo Bronzer is more than accurate. This is a big brush, and for bronzing, expected, you have the pinched ferrule here, the beautiful blue lacquer handle that has this gorgeous gradient from the black up into the warm blue shade, and you have Niji here on one side of the handle and the name of the brush on the other side. This brush is made in Japan, as all Niji brushes are, and something I had mentioned in my other Fude videos is that Japanese made brushes are handmade, the craftsmanship is unparalleled, and all these bristles were hand bundled in a way to create this specific shape. You can see how fluffy it is, but there's a beautiful dose of density, and Sonia describes this brush to be big but disciplined, and I think that's perfect to describe the design, because although it is rather large, it covers a big region of the face on the one go, it does have that precision about it, which is great for a bronzer brush, because we do love, or I'll speak for myself, I love to accomplish that sun-kissed look on the face, the huge big three, when using a bronzing powder that envelops your complexion. I think a bigger brush is required to deliver that look to the skin, but for it to have a little more precision also, I think is fantastic, because you can feel that there's a strength about it, and as Sonia wrote in her blog, there's predictability. You can feel where the bristles will go, where they will stay, compared to, let's say, the Eyeshadow Grand Finishing Powder Brush. I had went into full detail in my Eyeshadow video. I'll be happy to link that down below. The Eyeshadow brush is made with Gray Squirrel, and you can see not as dense as the Jumbo Bronzer. I had demoed with this brush using bronzer, but you can see there's a lot more splay, and it doesn't feel as direct as the Jumbo Bronzer does. The tips of the bristles pretty much stay in the hollows of the cheeks, and the rest of the bristles splay out just a little bit, but there's not as much splay as, let's say, the Face Pro. So together with the Face Pro, you're looking at a smaller brush head size from the Face Pro, as well as a different brush head design altogether. Face Pro has the angle, Jumbo Bronzer is flat round, and there might be a little bit of the same density, but Face Pro is a lot more fluffy, and there's kind of like this hugging sensation that occurs when using the Face Pro. I like to use this with bronzer as well, also applying loose powder all over my face, but the Face Pro is a lot more fluffy and maybe a lot less predictable than the Jumbo Bronzer. Jumbo Bronzer, you can feel there's more directness here. There's a little more feedback from the brush versus the Face Pro, but you might prefer Face Pro because of that reason. It just has a little more of that fluffy sensation, which people I think like to feel when applying bronzer. It really all depends on your personal taste. And then we have the Niji Pro. Niji Pro is more of like a fan type brush, not quite. It has a stronger pinch on the ferrule and a lot more direct than the Jumbo Bronzer, a lot more precise. The bristles are shorter and more dense on the Niji Pro versus the Jumbo Bronzer, and this for sure has much more of a direct placement of color. You can feel that precision from the Niji Pro versus the Jumbo Bronzer, despite, I would say, Jumbo Bronzer is pretty precise for a bronzer brush of its size and bristle length, but the Niji Pro, you can just see a lot more direct and will have a stronger buffing sensation to the skin and will just leave behind a more polished finish. Again, because of its density and the shorter bristles, it's going to move around product a lot more. It won't disrupt your foundation, however, in leaving behind streaky, uneven finishes on the skin. But again, this is going to be a little more aggressive in the placement of color and with buffing versus the Jumbo Bronzer, again because of density and bristle length. Compared to the Master Face, we have next to the Jumbo Bronzer, which by the way will be a part of the Sky set. Sonia have written that it's not limited, but it all depends on the availability and of course manufacturing. That will determine whether Jumbo Bronzer will be available long term or not. So just keep an eye on those details. And if you're not really sure, you want to wait until there's an answer to that situation and you need to get it now, I get it. Again, next to the Master Face. Master Face is a lot smaller, round ferrule as opposed to pinch, as in found in the Jumbo Bronzer. You can see because of its smaller size is a lot more direct and precise and will give a stronger buffing sensation to the skin. Again, because of its ball shape, a lot more dense, smaller. You can maneuver around the complexion a lot easier than the Jumbo Bronzer, again because of its smaller brush head size, but this is going to give a lot more color on the one go versus the Jumbo Bronzer. Again, despite how predictable Jumbo Bronzer can feel on the skin and picks up product pretty nicely. If you want a heavier dose of color here on the hollows of the cheekbones, maybe higher to bring it down, then Master Face is going to deliver that pigmentation to you. I have the rest of the Sky face set here, and together with the Jumbo Bronzer, I think makes a spectacular collection. So here, this was not originally released with the collection. We have the Smooth Buffer, which is slightly smaller than the Face 1, I believe. This is a flat top brush that is designed for buffing purposes. It buffs powder into the skin, leaves behind that beautiful polished look. Forgive me, I forgot to show everything with the beloved Master Face. And then we have one of my most favorite Sonia cheek brushes of all time is the Soft Cheek Brush. Longer bristled round ferrule tapered here in a slight dome. Fantastic for more of an airlight type of application. The size is perfect to place bronzer not only into the hollows but to place color here on the cheeks. But again, I adore round ferrule cheek brushes because I think it just lends itself to that intuitiveness to just swirl and twirl. Very smooth on the skin, leaves behind great color. Compared to the classic cheek, you know, just for funsies, clearly two different roles all together, but I think great now that it's in the Sky set because you have the soft cheek to brush light doses of color on the cheeks, but now you have Jumbo Bronzer to envelop that part of your face in such a big fashion. But again, it's a great brush where Sonia also compares her Jumbo Bronzer brush to the coveted Tom Ford bronzer brush. And I agree, the Tom Ford is a lot more fluffy and doesn't have the same predictability as the Jumbo Bronzer. Jumbo Bronzer, despite its size, pretty much flows together. Again, there's really beautiful synchronization here with the bristles. You can see how well they move together. They don't splay and go out of control, which is fantastic for a brush this size, because if you are intimidated by applying bronzer, but you love to use big brushes, so you're trying to find that place in the middle, right? Big bronzer brush, afraid of bronzer, it's gonna be okay. This is gonna just deliver that color seamlessly and easily here where you need it. But again, in that sun-kissed fashion, but it won't go out of control. And you could just feel the fluidity on your cheeks, but at the same time, the placement is predictable. You know where the color is gonna stay and it's gonna look fabulous. All those comparisons are out the way. I think it's time for you to get in a little closer for these demos. That's enough. I wanted to start with the Haus Labs bronzer. This is like a gel to powder type of a gig. It's not as baked, let's say, as the Makeup Forever Pro Bronze Fusion or the Tom Ford, like the old Tom Ford Bronze Age Ultimate Bronzer. So I'll lightly tap here into the Haus Labs, and you can see that there's really nice pickup just from that. And I'm basically keeping the brush here, more or less into the hollows of the cheeks. But see how just the brush finds the product where it needs to go. Despite the brush's size, the placement is not out of control. You can feel where the powder is going, and the placement is consistent, right? It's not like all over the place or random, which is great for a brush this size. And I think Sonia just nailed it with the design, brush head size, bristle length, and density. Great to have this with Psycho Goat hair because yes, it's not as soft as Squirrel, but depending on your makeup application preferences, people like a lot of product. And if that's your case, then definitely with dyed Psycho Goat hair, it's still soft, but you get a little more pickup than Squirrel. Now to go into with harder to pick up textures like the Tom Ford Bronze Age. This is more baked gelée than what we saw from Haus Labs. And let me do a little quick wipe here. And we'll just go back and forth on the bronzer. And this is what I would use the Niji Pro for, as I had demonstrated in that video if you want to take a look. The Niji Pro is for those hard to pick up bronzer textures that are found in this baked gelée formula. And you see you have to go in a few times just to get enough color. I got a little more there. It could be just the color itself. This is a lot lighter than the Haus Lab shade, but just so you can see, I'll take the Niji Pro, a good dose of that, and the Niji Pro is just gonna pick up a lot more and place more on the skin, but just work the product in the skin much more in a polished fashion than what you find in the jumbo bronzer. And that's fine. I think they're totally different brushes for different purposes. People might want the Niji Pro over the jumbo bronzer because they want more directness and precision in that category, and to feel how the brush just targets that area of your face, but also how it manipulates the product. Just for funsies, I'll take the Pro Fusion bronzer with jumbo now, and it's that same baked gelée formula, but whoo, you could go over that part of your skin if you want to buff out the product more, or if you happen to have the Niji Pro, you can polish the application after you've applied your powders with the jumbo bronzer. You can go in with the Niji Pro for some finishing. And here are some close-up shots after we've applied the different bronzers with both the jumbo bronzer and Niji Pro, and you can see just how smooth the application is despite how much powder we applied. The skin appears flawless. It doesn't look muddied up or textured in any way, and that is a testament to just how well crafted these brushes are. I think due to the uncut bristles, that very fine point to the bristle lends to just a smooth blend on the skin. No matter how many powders you layer on top of each other like we did here, again, it just looks natural, satin. There's like a luminosity to it, and I enjoyed the Jumbo Bronzer when I used it over this weekend. It just has a beautiful feel on the skin, again with its huge size, but like Sonia had written, there's a predictability that just makes you feel secured about your application, knowing that it's not going to go out of control. You're not going to have the dreaded bronzer beard, right, where it has happened sometimes. It did happen to me back in my early makeup days. I would use a huge bronzer brush, but the application was a little out of control because, again, the huge brush, it looked muddy. This, that despite its size, bristle length, and density, however you maneuver across the skin, there's still a precision to it, which again makes for an amazing experience when it comes to bronzing. And one of my most favorite parts of the makeup application process, and I had mentioned before, yes, I've been skipping bronzer and just been going into the blush, especially if it's a terracotta color like my beloved Paradise Venus. But I would use this with Paradise Venus as well, and a double whammy, yay, rewards. Using a color like Paradise Venus will take a little more precision, and you know what, why don't we go into that right now? Again, even though Jumbo Bronzer is pretty big, it's absolutely perfect in terms of how it applied it. It didn't go too low. In fact, I could just whip some here on the apples of my cheeks. I know this is a bronzer brush, but to just splay the color out in this fashion, but it still have that precise maneuvering. Look at that. That is absolutely gorgeous. Sonia has done it again. At this moment, it's hard for me to say what my favorite brush is because I do love them all. I think they have different purposes. As I'm going from one to the other now, I can feel the difference, but the Jumbo Bronzer is beyond satisfying to use. And I think, again, is to feel a brush of this size and have that security and control at the same time. It's just so harmonious. I love it. I still love my Niji. I love my Face Pro. This brush is just holy grail. I know I did not include it in my holy grail video. That doesn't mean it's not a favorite, okay? I definitely will find myself reaching for this more often, and now maybe getting back into bronzer because I got the tool now, so watch out. Bronzer Bay, here she comes. And also with the B Shuttle brush, totally different design expectations altogether. This is going to give you more air light application. This is actually more of a finishing brush. I presented it as like a powder, loose powder application brush. However, though, if you feel Psycho Goat hair is just too much, it lays down too much product, and you prefer Squirrel anyway for just a lighter application of color, I totally get it. But if you're in the camp of getting the bronzer on and showing that it's there, this might be for you. It might be for you. And again, don't know the availability details because Sonia herself had said is unpredictable at this point. Depending on the materials and the manufacturing, once more, will determine if this brush will be available long term, if it will come back right away. We really don't know. So if you are unsure and you still are on the search for that ultimate bronzing brush, you are a fan of Sonia, you've loved all her brushes so far, maybe get it, maybe. If you're on a budget and you really can't right now, even though you want it, and you have any of the Sonia brushes that I presented in the comparisons, then you're good. Yes, is it going to be slightly different in application? Yes. Is it going to be a different application experience? Yes. I just want to present this as reasonable as possible. I don't want you to feel like you have to get it now or else you'll lose it forever. Know that if you have any of the brushes I showed, you're in good hands already. You will accomplish amazingly beautiful makeup looks. However, I understand if this is something you've been looking for, waiting for, if you have bronzer brushes already and they just haven't done it. They have not gone there in terms of just immaculateness. Listen, the link is affiliated. Just so you know, if you don't want to use my link, it will be on the Beautylish site. Maybe you have already pre-ordered this because I believe when the email was sent, you had the option of getting your name on there so that a Beautylish representative could reach out to say, hey, you want this brush before it's released to the public? We know we love those texts, but it's also a little stressful at the same time because you're like, What should I do? What should I do? Should I buy it now or not? But I will say, if you decide to take the plunge and get the jumbo bronzer, you will not be disappointed. 100%. Again, a huge thank you to Sonia and the Beautylish team for sending this. Beyond generous, and happy again to see Sonia create. Her genius is just always amazes me how much detail she puts into creating these tools, how much thought. And despite the fact that she has so many brushes, not only of her own brushes, but her entire Fude collection is unfathomable, she still manages to create something she feels is missing. I think, like, if she wanted to create the ultimate type of this brush, she still will do it. And we see time and time again that Sonia brings a uniqueness to this space in the Japanese brush space, and it's just a pleasure to experience her work, to experience her passion. And yes, if you do decide to get this brush, expect marvelous things with your bronzing. That is it, fam. Let me know if you plan to pick this up. If not, I'll see you all down in those thought comments below. And until then, fam, that is a wrap. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope this video helped, and if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, or maybe consider, as I said before, subscribing. And until then, I will see you on here again with another review tutorial, Fude video extravaganza, or monthly faves. Take care, and I will see you again soon.